Yo, good morning. Welcome to sunny Las Vegas. I'm going to show you potentially the greatest hero call I have ever made in my life. So, hope you enjoy this one. So it starts off at a 100, 200, 200, 400 game. So that's a 200 ante, 1-2 blinds, 400 straddle. And we make a pretty standard open from the hijack with ace-jack spades. Small blind looks down at ace-10 suited. Looks like we're going to get 3-bet.
Funny.
Don't remember.
We get the 5x 3-bet. I think this is pretty standard. I think our play is very standard, just a call.
If I can quote, in live poker, you gotta make these folds. Sometimes you gotta make these. Yep, lesson.
Fives in the straddle. Unfortunate to let it go with the 3-bet. Easy call for me. Let's see the flop.
Nice little skillet there. 10,600 in there.
All right, this is a pretty dry flop. 9-4-4, 2 clubs. Ace-10 clubs, obviously flopping the nut flush draw here. I think this is going to be pretty standard c-bet from him. And my hand with the backdoor flush draw can quite happily call.
4-4-9. A couple of clubs. Ben with the club draw.
See what sizing he makes it. 2.7. So it's about just under a quarter. So quite a small c-bet, and we have a pretty easy call. Queen of spades turn. Okay, as the ace of clubs, as the ace of clubs here, it's a nice turn to barrel. Deep stack, we don't want to just be piling loads of money in because it's just disastrous being out of position deep stack because in position could do a lot more damage to you and float a lot more, that kind of stuff. So we could consider a check here, actually, but I think barreling is going to be great. I think bluffing me off hands like pocket fives all the way up to pocket eights is going to be relatively easy on this turn, so it's quite a nice barrel. That being said, I don't hate check because I will check back hands like 5 suited 8, so you can bluff me off on the river. Plus, you get to do some nice check calls and check raises on the turn and defend your range. But ace high could be ahead here. For example, if I did float the flop with a hand like Jack 10 of spades, something like that, then I am potentially going to bet and you're going to get to check call, and then I probably will bluff club. So there's some merits to checking here too, but I think the standard is going to be the bet. And then for me, with a nut flush draw on the turn, I'm going to have a decision between call and raise, and that's going to depend on what sizing he makes it and what kind of stack size we have on the turn. So let's have a look.
Queen of spades.
You want me, if you want to bluff 2 streets now, turn and river, you want me to naturally have hands that are going to fold, call the turn and fold the river. Ace and a club is one of those hands, so we block that. So we don't really want to use this one as a river bluff. If we're not using this hand as a river bluff, we probably do want to start sizing up on the turn to get more folds on the turn, and then not bluff as much on the river. So sizing wise here, we can see that Ben has about 105k in his stack. I have 47k. I think quite a large bet here makes sense. I think somewhere around the 12k mark would be quite good here. Sets up a river jam that we're not going to make.
Now a spade draw for Ginge.
I'm rooting for a brick river here to see how this plays out.
It does go 9,000 here. I think, if I'm reading the chips properly, I think that's a little bit too small, to be honest. But if you are going to make a small sizing, it is going to come into play on the river, whether you do want to barrel again. So don't forget, I've got a decision now between raise and call. Now, the problem with raise is that I'm basically committed to 3-bet jams. And also, yeah, I've got to actually make him fold a worse hand. I can potentially make him fold jacks if he barrels jacks, which wouldn't be the end of the world, but I block that. Can potentially make him fold a hand like king jack, which making him fold hands that are worse than mine here isn't the end of the world, because if he bluffs me on the river, I can't call. So if he does happen to have like king jack or hearts here and I jam ace jack of spades, yes, he has a worse hand, but if he was going to jam the river and I was going to lose on every non-spade river because he's the aggressor here, jamming would have still achieved something. So in my spot here, I'm thinking about whether I can raise. If I can maybe jam, I would have raised. So for example, if I happen to have like a 30k stack, I probably could have considered jamming. Raising to like 27 is a bit awkward for my stack because I basically commit myself. So it's basically a jam. And I think jamming 47k over this bet is essentially not really a thing. It's just too big. I'm only getting like snap called by worst. I need to be bluffing quite a lot to make that good. And I don't think he is. And my hand makes a pretty nice call. But sizes are really, really important to be reading for how to break down their range. So automatically we see through it pre from the small blind, so he's got a pretty strong range here pre. He's see bet quite small on the flop, which deep stat poker isn't really a thing with like super good hands. And he's gone reasonably small on the turn, not like mega small, but small. I'm reading into this while I'm playing. I'm trying to figure out what people are doing with the sizes. Does he know he's supposed to bet bigger, or is he doing it small on purpose? If he's doing it small on purpose, what's the reason? So these are the things I'm thinking about on the turn. I thought about jamming. I found the 9,000. I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to jam. I am just going to call.
Flush. We are going to see a river, that's for sure. As Ben puts in a 9K bet.
And I'm concerned about this 9K bet. I'm not concerned, but I'm thinking about it. What the hell is it?
Ginge Poker with a quick call. I respect Ginge Poker's speed of play. He really does seem to like make quick calls in spots where there's not much to think about.
So the king is not a brick. The king does complete Jack 10. That is the only major value hand I see completing, other than maybe Ace King that double barreled, which is possible, and maybe some flush draw kings that maybe got there, and maybe pocket kings exactly. Occasionally King Queen as well. So let's see what he does.
King on the river. That's what I wanted. Total brick. Let's see if Ben wants to go for it. As I was talking about in that last hand, these are actually the kinds of hands you generally don't want to bluff when you have the missed flush draw.
Yeah, so like we hear there from the commentator, we definitely, well, usually don't want to be bluffing these ace of clubs combos, but the king looks like a pretty sexy one to barrel. But whenever you're bluffing and whenever you're calling or whatever you're doing, you need to basically try and think of hands that are always in your opponent's range that do the thing that you want them to do. So a hand here that would potentially be always in my range is Ace Jack of Spades. So that's a pretty cool one. But also one of the main hands that I would always have here is going to be anything from like Ace 5 of clubs all the way to Ace 8 of clubs that would have to fold this river, and you block that really, really hard with this Ace of clubs hand. I probably have way less Ace 8 of spades because I'm probably going to fold the flop at least. Well, I probably wouldn't fold the flop versus that small sizing, but I'm going to have some Ace X of spades hands. But I'm just saying, if you happen to have Jack 8 of hearts here, it's a way better bluff than Ace 10 of clubs. The Ace of clubs just blocks a lot of it, or even a smaller flush draw would be better. If you happen to have 10 8 of clubs, it would be a better bluff because I have more nut flushes here than I do like 8 7. Well, I have 8 7 of clubs too, but the point is the Ace of clubs does block way more hands, and there are slightly more optimal bluffs, but we also now block Jack 10, which is kind of a hand that I could potentially have here too. You block Ace Queen of clubs, you block Ace King of clubs, so there's some hands that I might call with that you also block too. So yeah, I'm not sure. You've gone kind of small on the flop, kind of small on the turn, so you've left my range particularly wide, so the bluff becomes less bad because my range is wider, so I have more hands that I'm going to have to fold. But let's see what he thinks about and what he does and what sizing he chooses.
Make it a little bit more likely that Ginge Poker actually has a made hand himself, because he can't have a missed ace high flush draw.
So in my head here, I'm thinking, if he checks, what do I do? I'm not expecting a check, but in my head, I'm like, all right, is this the hand that I have to bluff here? And I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, I guess I have to block the backdoor flush draws because he's got some give ups with the nut flush draws. And I do block Jack 10, and if I'm trying to rep Jack 10, what size am I going to choose? So I was thinking about these kind of things while I'm waiting to see what he was going to do.
But in this case, it's a little different with all these scare cards that have come.
Also, I have 38.4k, which is just over pot, so that's also an interesting consideration based on what sizing he's going to choose, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Now, his 10 does block Jack 10. His ace does block Ace King, so Ginge Poker might 4-bet pre-flop with that.
There's no bounties on day one. On day two, everybody gets a bounty chip like a normal bounty tournament. So when you bust somebody, you get bounties. So you bust one person, you get 1. You bust 10 people, you get 10. And then they'll have like a raffle.
You're really thinking about this. Is this a bluff? And if it's a bluff, what sizing is he going to choose? Choose 18,000.
Big bet.
All right. I look back on my cards. I got Ace Jack of Spades. Probably just going to fold, right?
18,000.
But like I always do, we got to rerun the hands in our heads. We got to think about what's going on. We got to think about sizing. We got to think about what this guy thinks about sizing, and we got to really figure this out. Okay, so we got a 3-bet pre. Nothing really to read there other than 3-bet pre range. Then we get a small c-bet on the flop. We get a smallish bet on the turn, and now we get 18,000 into 34 when I have a 39k stack. So the reason I bring that up is that I could quite easily have a hand like Jack 10. I could quite easily have a hand like King Queen. I quite easily have a hand like maybe even Pocket Queens. So if your man Ben has got pocket nines here, you could almost argue for the small size on the flop. You could almost argue for the small size on the turn because he blocks a lot of the calling hands that I have. Plus, I'm going to be calling drawing dead with some of my flush draws. But then it becomes like a reasonably nice jam on the river. So a jam on the river here is great because if I have a straight, I always call. If I have a 4, I always call. If I have 2 pair, I probably usually call. If I have a hero, you know, sometimes I think he's bluffing too much. I'm going to find a call with maybe like ace king with the king of clubs. So his bet size here, in my opinion, eliminates pocket nines. Now let's break it down even more. Now let's try and think about what his value has. So what are his main value hands? So let's say ace 4 is probably one of his great value. But again, that could probably choose a large sizing on the turn and probably would. 16,000 a pot. Are you going to bet 9,000 there with 2 flush draws with ace 4? So I'm thinking about ace 4 and then I'm eliminating that. Now this, again, this is not an exact science, but when I'm breaking down hands, I have to almost use exact science because if not, we're going to, oh, he has some combos of ace 4 sometimes. But the way I think about it in game, I'm like, all right, this guy knows there's 2 flush draws there. He's going to get big with ace 4. For the sake of my working out here, I'm going to eliminate ace 4. So I've eliminated nines, I've eliminated ace 4. Now that leaves us with pocket queens, pocket kings, jack 10, and aces. So if he's got jack 10, is he going to choose these sizings? I think jack 10 possibly could choose these sizings if he had no flush draw. So that would be a nice hand to set up the river jam with. So for example, it would go potentially go small on the flop. I'm not sure. Potentially go small on the turn, and then was able to jam the river. But then it's like, okay, well, that also concludes jam the river. So he's jamming the river with jack 10 because it's a pretty nice run to jam the river because I still have a bunch of 2 pairs and I still have a bunch of like ace 4, 4, 5 myself. So I'm also not folding those hands. So jack 10 still, in my opinion, concludes jam the river. So let's talk about queens, kings, and aces. So queens, honestly, I can see someone trapping the turn. And again, on the river, I can see them choosing a larger sizing. Kings, same kind of thing. I think you would go larger on the turn for sure because I have plenty of like ace queens, queen x flush draws. So the turn sizing really is putting me off. So you see how when I'm thinking about these hands, I'm not just thinking like, oh, he bet. I'm thinking, what sizing would he choose with this particular hand? What sizing would he choose with that particular hand? And then I'm like, so I've eliminated queens. I'm trying to think about kings. And I'm also thinking about aces. And I'm also thinking about jack 10. And I'm also thinking about nines, and I'm also thinking about 4x. And those are the main hands I think he has with value. Now I'm thinking about king queen. What does he do with king queen? And king queen, I don't know. I was tough with that one. And maybe occasionally has a hand like king jack of clubs. I personally don't think he bets king jack of clubs here. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. I think he's probably either going to check call, and the pot is so big that you tend to find that, especially title live players, they're going to find the check, decide, and hope for the check, and then occasionally hero call it. Depending on what sizing I choose, because obviously I can bluff jam here if he checks, and I would have potentially gone all in. Part of me is also thinking about going all in. I eliminate that one actually because I think that based on the way he played his hand, I couldn't think of a value combo. So if I can't think of a value combo, can I think of bluffs? Because there's no point calling if you can't think of value. A lot of people make this mistake. They go, I can't think of value, so I call. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. If you can't think of value but he never has a bluff, it doesn't matter. Then he probably just has that 0.01 combo of value. That's just what he has, and that's unfortunate. You have to be able to think of bluffs. So let's think of his bluffs. I think there's a reason why my bluffs. I think if he's got the ace 10 of clubs, which is proven, which I wasn't really thinking about. I was thinking about the 7-6 of clubs. I was thinking about the 7-6 of spades. I was thinking about the 8-7 of spades. I was thinking about all these hands. Honestly, I tell you the truth, I thought I was ahead of ace-6 of clubs when I was thinking about this hand. I completely kind of brain farted whilst I was thinking about all of that I was actually chopping with the ace-10 of clubs. So these are all the things I'm thinking about while I'm playing the hand. I'm also obviously trying to pick up tails. I'm also trying to think about all the bet sizing I've seen this guy use in previous hands. And let's see what I do. So originally I'm just folding, but I always try and think about the hand. I always try and break it down. Like maybe this is a nice spot where I can find a jam. Maybe this is a nice spot where I can find a call. Maybe my hand's a good call. Maybe my hand's a better call. Because if I think he's only value his aces, I want an ace, right?
Ginge Poker unlikely to be considering a call, though he does beat the missed flush draws. Doesn't really have that much to raise. His all-in would be just over a min-raise. He really seems to be thinking about it, though. Ginge Poker does not just tank for no reason, as we've seen throughout the night. He
Intent.
likely is actually considering putting in some chips in one way or another here.
I do tend to play fast. I'm not slow rolling. I'm not doing this for camera time, I'll tell you that. Could have ace jack himself.
Daniel Blaha says not a whole lot of misdraws that don't have a pair. That's true, but those misdraws that have a pair would not bluff. That's the key.
Exactly right.
If Ben had a hand like Queen 10 of clubs, he would not bet the river like this. He would just take his showdown value. But if he had a hand like 7-6 of clubs or 7-6 in spades, he would know that he'd have to bluff to win the pot.
I'm not happy.
All we do is watch. We were the last, in the stand-up game, we were the last four standing, and then every big pot to them.
Pretty incredible that he's taking this time to think through this.
Imagine making this call on stream and just being wrong. Obviously at 9, you dickhead.
Makes the call.
Table is confused. Table is
Incredible call by Ginge.
It's a chop. It's a chop. Ace, king, queen, 4-4.
I knew it was a chop once the cards went over, but at the time when I was breaking down in my head,
You know what's funny? I didn't even realize it was a chop as he was tanking.
Yeah, no, it was a chop. He was.
I was so focused on the fact that he was considering a call with ace high. I did not even think of the fact that it would be a chop.
No, yeah. What incredible call there by Ginge.
That's a really bad beat for Ginge.
It's a bad
like
beat.
if I was in that spot.
so the commentator says it's a bad beat. I guess I'll take it. It was a bad beat, but I like my call. I think I broke it down quite well. A little bit of a brain fart thinking that ace jack could have beat some of the nut flush draw combos that he had at the time, at least. But so happy to chop once I see that, I guess. But let me know what you think of the hand. Let me know what you think of the breakdown. Let me know if you would have called or you would have folded or you would have jammed. Probably you would have jammed, right? You saw the cards. So catch you on the next one. Subscribe if you like these videos.